Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly believe it's all about them and no one else matters. And in today's episode, we've got parents demanding homes from their kids, neighborhood speeders, and one OP talks about the time an entitled Karen neighbor tries to get them evicted, and it backfires big time on her. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So to start, the community I live in has a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. It also has a connecting street to another development which leads to a main road, so people tend to cut through my neighborhood to get there. Many drivers enjoy speeding through the streets rather than following the speed limit. The local police department, therefore, has decided to start implementing surprise speed traps right by the main entrance. Now, I've never been stopped by one, as I like to drive safely and not get tickets I can't afford. But I often end up in front of other drivers who like to drive recklessly and get angry when those in front of them don't do the same. So that said, our story begins when my car's cruise control button finally got fixed. I had long been waiting for this because then I could finally get back at this one D-bag. There was this one gentleman who regularly cuts through my neighborhood who owns a Dodge Challenger. For those who don't know, Challengers can get loud, and this guy had his car modified to make it roar. Because of his modifications, this fellow enjoys revving the engine every 100 yards or so to inform everyone nearby that this is a Dodge Challenger driven by an awesome person. You only wish you were him. Well, this morning, I find myself pulling out of my driveway right as the Challenger turns the corner and approached. And you can bet your ass that I booped that cruise control button and I meandered at a comfortably legal 25 miles per hour the entire ride through my neighborhood. The driver behind me was pissed. He was revving the engine, flashing his high beams at me, riding my bumper, the works, and I was loving it. The best part was when we turned down the street right before the main entrance. Sure enough, a police car was there. Now normally, the police puts their car there without an officer inside, just to spook drivers into slowing down. But today, the universe was on my side. In his haste to pass me and continue his merry way, the driver of the Challenger didn't notice the upcoming police car, because he revs his engine one more time and then scooted past me on a squeal of tires. Across a double yellow line, might I add. And for good measure, the guy rolls down his window and he screams, "F you" to me. And the police car, that glorious, glorious police car, just flipped on its lights and whipped out onto the street and pulled the moron over. I haven't laughed that hard in years. Nothing like a road-raging idiot getting what they deserve, guys. And seriously, I hope with that ticket, it got the guy to slow down and be less of an idiot, because speeding through a neighborhood is not cool at all. And this person writes, "Retired cop here. Let me be the first to tell you that we absolutely revel in this just as much as you do. I've never written a ticket in my entire career that wasn't well-deserved and earned by the tool who got it. If you got a ticket from me, you absolutely earned it. And it definitely felt good when you had a-holes like in this story who clearly feel that they're the most important person ever, and that anywhere they decide to go is way more urgent and important than anyone else." Okay, so buckle up because this one is wild, and living it has been like starring in a tragic comedy. I never thought I'd encounter a parent this entitled, but apparently my mom takes the crown. And here is some background. I've had a rough ride growing up. My dad was abusive and an alcoholic, and my parents divorced when I was little. I've been kicked out multiple times, from my dad's house, from my uncle's, and again from my dad's later on. Basically, I've spent years navigating homelessness, going through shelters, and family drama. On to my mother. Well, she's never been a bad mom in the classic sense, but she's always kept her distance. She wasn't interested in the messy parts of parenting, as intimacy and independence always came first for her. And sure, she sometimes helped, but only when it benefited her. That said, fast forward to now. My grandparents stepped in big time. They've got multiple properties, tons of money, and they've helped my brother and me get on our feet. They even bought my brother a small apartment so we'd have a permanent home, with the idea that I would eventually get a property as well. Everything was supposed to be straightforward. But enter my mom. When she found out that my grandparents were planning to help me with a home, at first she seemed supportive when I started looking for my own place. I thought maybe this is a good sign, but then the comments started. She would say things like, "This neighborhood is terrible. You can't live here. Do you really like that place? I know what's best for you. The park nearby is full of drug addicts. You'll get robbed." Now at first, I brushed it off, but then it escalated. She started dropping hints, which were more like demands about moving into my place. She framed it as helping me, saying things like, "We get along so well, you wouldn't even notice I'm here." I, of course, tried to explain that I needed my own space, that she can't just move in without my consent, and that living with me is ridiculous. But she had clearly been plotting this for months. The next place we looked at, she even outlined which room would be hers and how she'd changed this and that she'd live there with me so she could eventually buy it from me. That's when I asked her how much she planned to pay me monthly, and her response was, "Darling, you would charge your own mother rent?" Now, I had to pause and let that sink in. She wanted to live in my house and somehow end up owning my home before I even got it. That's when I ask her, "Are you out of your mind?" She then says, "It's fine. I'll travel the world soon anyways. I'm retiring. I won't live there for long." Of course, hearing her say that, I was speechless. I asked her, "Then what do you even want my house for?" I tried reasoning that she could rent her own place, live independently, and we could all coexist without her scheming to take my inheritance. But she wouldn't hear it. She huffed, fake cried, threw a tantrum, and she insisted this was all for our benefit. And here we are. Weeks later, she's still insisting that she'll move into my home, whether I like it or not, to quote, "help me." It's exhausting, absurd, and honestly kind of terrifying how detached from reality she is. I'm preparing myself for the day she tries to make it happen, and all I can do is hope that I can finally get my own place without her interference. The audacity of some people's mothers, right? And it honestly does seem like Opie has no choice at this point. And in my opinion, Opie might have to let grandparents know what mom's planning, because maybe they'll put an end to this. But yeah, so absurd, right? Like, how dare you expect to squeeze back into my life and live in my home when you're literally the worst mom ever? And listen, I'm only speaking from experience when I say people like Opie's mom only take, and they will end up screwing over the person who's helping them. And that was super obvious when she said to Opie, "You would charge your own mother rent?" I'm just glad Opie recognizes that no, mom, you won't be moving into my place at all. Like, it's just funny how some kids grow up to be leagues more mature than their own parents. So my dad is a professional at one thing, making every situation about himself, regardless of how little sense it makes. And yes, he's about to take it to a whole new level. First, here's some context. My dad trashed his credit in his younger years, and I mean obliterated it. He bought cars he couldn't afford, flat-screen TVs, went on lavish vacations, you name it. On top of that, he had me at 18, 4 kids total with my mom, and then surprise, he bailed after 5 years. Child support was never paid, ever. And instead of improving his financial situation, he spent the next 20 years managing money through illegal means and my brother's SSI checks. And still, there was no effort to rebuild his credit. None. Now enter the latest episode in my dad's fantasy universe. He wants to buy the house that he's been living in. Supposedly, the house was supposed to be sold to him via a land contract, but of course, he never actually bothered to sign anything, and now the landlord wants to sell. My dad obviously can't get the place on his own, and my bro can't qualify for a mortgage, so my dad's solution is clearly I should swoop in. I should use all my savings for a down payment to buy him a house, because why not? I of course tell him no, and that was a big mistake. Suddenly, my phone turns into a guilt trap machine. Text, phone calls, voicemails, and he's hit me with every classic entitled parent line. He'd say stuff like, "I raised you, all the sacrifices I made, and you owe me for this life." Like, yeah, apparently the universe revolves around the sacrifices my dad made, which was none for us, thank you very much. And somehow, that automatically entitles him to my bank account. I tell him politely, I'm not buying you a house. Cue meltdown number 1. He starts sending text messages about how he can't believe I'd be so heartless. And how could I deny him this after everything, because apparently, raising me as a barely functional adult is the ultimate life debt. When that didn't work, cue meltdown number 2. He calls, trying to guilt trip me, saying he's been trying so hard to provide for us, while ignoring the parts where he hasn't contributed to anything in decades. I finally had to put my foot down. I told him to never contact me ever again if he's gonna keep up with this. I refuse to be manipulated and I want to focus on my own life because, let's be honest, bending to his whims isn't generosity, it's enabling a full-grown adult who treats me like an ATM and somehow thinks I should feel guilty for saying no. And here's the wildest part. He genuinely believes this is all fair and I'm supposed to pay. Rant over. Again, don't you just hate it when parents who contribute nothing to their kids come crawling back wanting everything? Like wanting your kid to empty their savings account to buy you a house, all because you owe me, I raised you, except not, is freaking absurd, guys. And here's the thing, like a great parent who put in so much effort, I can see that maybe happening. But a deadbeat dad coming back after decades and just expecting this, like how many of you would have exploded on that man? The freaking nerve of some people. So years ago, I rented a duplex from a very nice owner. The guy was honest and reasonable, and I put a healthy security deposit down and moved in. Unfortunately, he was not my day-to-day contact. That was the delightful and charming Giselle. She was the on-site landlord. I found out later that she was a tenant who the owner just made an arrangement with. In return for cutting her rent in half, which was a sweet gig, she collected and deposited the rental checks. She also arranged repairs and she handled any other day-to-day things. The neighborhood had about 5 duplexes owned by this man, and Giselle hated me from day one. And what's more, she lived in the other half of the duplex. Giselle ticked off all the boxes of nightmare landlord. She was an HOA-style Karen obsessed with the rules. She would yell at my friends for parking an inch over on her side of the duplex. If that wasn't annoying enough, my phone or doorbell would ring if my place wasn't stone quiet a minute after quiet time. On top of that, the rental checks I dropped off would always get lost, and appliances and things were never fixed in a timely manner. It was more annoying than awful. I just told myself I could live with it, as I was gonna be moving closer to my job after my lease ran out. Later, I find out why she hates me. She had wanted a friend of hers to move into the duplex that I got, but the owner said no because her credit check was awful and mine was sparkling. So she just wanted to make my life miserable out of pure spite. As the end of the lease drew closer, I noticed my water heater was leaking. I just dried the floor around it and put some towels down. I then emailed Giselle and no response. A week later, I forward the email again with a friendly, "You may have missed this, but this could be a real problem." Again, no response. So I send another email saying, I had a friend who's a plumber look at it and he recommended immediately blah blah blah. Finally, she responds with, "I'll look into it," and nothing else. She was just trying to run the clock out on me. At this point, it had been about a month now, and I was just a few weeks away from moving out. I see Giselle watering her flowers, and I approached her and mentioned it. She blew me off, but she finishes the conversation with a threat. She says, "I hope you're keeping it clean around there because I'm a stickler when it comes to final inspection. If you want to get any of your deposit back, you'd better be ready to pass a white glove inspection." At that point, I thought, okay then, if this is how we're gonna play it, fine. I was trying to figure out how I would get back at her. About a week later, right before my last rent check was due, I happened to see the owner in the neighborhood. Giselle was nowhere to be found. And that's when it struck me how I could make all of this work. I went out to say hello and tell him thanks for renting to me and that I appreciate it. He was very friendly, and he said sorry I was leaving, etc., and if I need anything, to let him know. Checkmate. That's when I asked him if he had a few minutes to come in and do the security deposit inspection. He said sure, and we went to my place together. As we were walking around looking at things, he was all positive, saying stuff like, yeah, that looks great, no issues there. And then we come to the water heater. I paused dramatically and gravely. I said, I hope we can come to some kind of understanding about the floor around the water heater. I then opened the closet doors and show him. I then told him what I'd been doing to fight the leak. I pull up the sopping wet towels I'd put down the night before. And I told him we've had an experience with mold and it was nasty stuff. He just got quiet and he said, have you told Giselle about this? I tell him, why yes I did, and here's copies of the emails I sent to her. He read them and he'd noticed I'd kept them in a file folder. He then looked at me and said, are there other things that haven't been fixed? That's when I show him the few other emails I'd collected. He got beet red in the face and he said, okay, I think with what I've seen, I'm fine with releasing your full security deposit. In that moment, it struck me. I had one more rent check due, which was $750. I say to him, how about instead of me writing you a check for $750 and you writing me a check for $500, I just write you a check for $250 and we call it even. He just shrugged and said, sure. He signed the paperwork and left. A few days later, I dropped my check for $250 in the mail slot. And later that evening, Giselle pounded on my door. She was basically foaming at the mouth how I didn't write a full check. She was practically screaming at me that I can get evicted if I don't write a check for the full amount right frickin' now. I then explained, conveniently omitting that the owner had done the inspection, that $750 less my security deposit of $500 was $250. Giselle's eyes widened as her brain tried to comprehend what I said. She nearly exploded, yelling at me that that's not how things are done and you have to obey the rules like everyone else. And she has final say because she does the inspections. And seriously, she literally had spittle flying out of her mouth, she was so enraged. That's when I calmly told her the owner had done the inspection, and he signed off on the payment arrangement, and I told her to talk to him. She was of course arguing, and that's when I said, get off my porch and quit bothering me. I very slowly closed the door on her, and again her brain froze. She went into lockdown, trying to process what I just said. And that was an image that I'll remember forever. Before I moved out, the owner came by to ask if he could come in and fix the water heater for the next tenant. I said sure, and as we were working, we talked a little, and he mentioned that his daughter was moving into my place, and she was gonna take over the on-site landlord duties. That's when I asked about Giselle. The owner just simply said she'll be moving out. She decided she couldn't afford to pay the full rent anymore with his daughter taking over. And this is what you get for being petty for no frickin' reason, guys. Well played, OP. And the best part about this whole thing is all OP did was tell the truth to the landlord, and everything just crumbled beneath Karen. Like, I absolutely love it when entitled jerks get their comeuppance in an epic way. Like, have fun finding a new home to live in, Karen. You should have been nicer. Alright, so this happened last summer, and it still makes my blood pressure rise every time I think about it. I live in a small, quiet city with a lot of old stone buildings and too many people who think they run the place. My family rents a cozy little house right across from a park where every weekend during the summer, they hold this huge farmers market. It's the event of the week. Dozens of tents, food trucks, live music, and people selling overpriced honey and hand-knit socks. Like, it's a whole thing. And every single weekend, parking turns into a nightmare. We've got a long driveway, so we let family and friends park there when they ask. But that's the key, you have to ask. Random people don't just get to roll in and set up shop in our space. So on this particular Saturday, the farmer's market is in full swing. My parents are both at work, and I'm home alone, doing nothing, watching TV, blah blah blah. And that's when I hear tires crunching on the gravel driveway. At first, I figure someone's turning around, because it does happen sometimes, but the sound doesn't stop. That's when I look outside and I see a car door open. It's a silver car, and out steps this woman who looks like she was molded out of entitlement. There's 3 kids in the back. That's when I sigh, put my shoes on, and step outside. I say to her, excuse me, ma'am, do my parents know you? The woman just looks me up and down like I just asked her to donate a kidney or something. And she says, why would your parents know me? At that, I blink and I say, because we only let family or friends park here, so if you're not either, I'm gonna have to ask you to move your car and use the public parking. Hearing that, the woman actually laughs and she says, no, I don't think so. There's nobody parked here except that truck. She then points to my mom's coworker's truck who had come earlier and asked permission. I explain that, and she gives me a smirk and she says, whatever. She then starts unbuckling her kids, and I tell her, ma'am, you really can't park here, it's private property. And she then cuts me off mid-sentence and she says, do your parents own this house? I just stare at her and I ask, what? She then repeats herself and she says, do your parents own this house? I tell her, no, we rent. She then smirks like she won a court case, and she says, then you have no right to tell me I can't park here. You don't own this place. Meanwhile, her kids are climbing out of the car now. I take a deep breath because my patience is about to evaporate. And I say, okay, well let's call the landlord and ask him what he thinks. Now this is of course a bluff, I don't even have his number saved on my phone. But she doesn't know that. Her face just tightens and she says, no, there's no need for that. Because I'm the landlord. This is my property and I can park wherever I want. And then, as if summoned by karma itself, I can hear a familiar voice from the sidewalk. It's my landlord and he says, funny, I don't remember selling this house to you. And here's one thing I didn't mention. My landlord lives a few houses down. I look over and there he is, walking with his wife on the way to the market. The timing is divine. The woman freezes and you can see her brain short circuit. He just walks up calmly, hands in his pockets, and he says, would you mind telling me what's going on here? I just explain that she parked without permission, refused to leave, and claimed to be the landlord. At this point, she screeches and says, he's lying. You don't even own this place. The landlord then raises an eyebrow and he smirks and he says, actually, I do. And I'm pretty sure he asked you nicely not to park here. The woman just yells, fine, and then yanks her kids back in the car. She's muttering the whole time, saying something about people not knowing how to be friendly and help others these days. She then floors it out of the driveway and she nearly hits the mailbox. Tires screeching, kids wailing in the back, everything. My landlord and I both laugh. Yeah, the things people will say to get what they want, right? You won't let me park at your house? Well, I'm the landlord. It's my house. Like, how on earth she thought that was gonna work, I have no frickin' clue, guys. And if I were in Opie's shoes, I honestly would have said, fine, you can park at my place, and let her walk off and called a tow truck. Like, why would you waste your breath entertaining these people who are so delusional with their entitlement? So let me set the scene. Where I live, we just got hit with around 10 inches of snow, which is absolutely lovely. And here is a little context. I don't have kids. I work from home, enjoy my peace, and that's that. Today, I get a knock at my door. Standing there are 4 boys, maybe 12-ish, and they're holding shovels like they just conquered Everest. They tell me that they've shoveled my driveway and sidewalk, and now they expect payment, $15 each. Of course, hearing that, I'm completely dumbfounded because they never asked if it was okay to shovel my driveway. They just did it, and apparently, they're running a freelance snow removal business on my property. I tell them I don't have cash. And that's when one of them whips out a smartphone, showing me their mom's Venmo account. I then start explaining very calmly that I never agreed to pay anyone for shoveling. I was planning to shovel it myself. If they had asked, I would have said no. That's when their faces drop and suddenly they're yelling at me saying, "You're not gonna pay us for our work?" And I'm thinking, work? What work? You volunteered, I didn't hire you. That's when I shut the door, which is problem solved, right? No. A couple of hours later, their mom shows up, fully enraged. The woman screaming and listing her reasons why I should pay her kids. She's saying stuff like, it's only $60, surely it won't break me. That they did a good deed and they deserve payment. That I'm apparently ungrateful and my refusal might lead them straight to drugs next time. And yes, you heard that right, drugs. At this point, I'm mad. I tell her I never asked for this and it is nice they shoveled, but this isn't a contract. You can't just show up on someone's property, do work without asking, and then demand payment. That's not how this works. Of course, she tries to guilt trip me into paying this time so her boys will ask in the future. Meanwhile, I stand firm. I don't want to teach them that you can manipulate people into paying for things they didn't agree to. And now, apparently, I'm a heartless monster in the neighborhood. I've talked to some neighbors, and the mom's been spreading word that I'm exploiting children or being ungrateful for their help. But no, I'm just refusing to pay for a service I never requested. So the moral of the story is just because someone has a shovel and cute little faces doesn't mean you owe them money. That's exactly right, and honestly, reading this post, the first thought that came to mind was those scams that people pull on foreigners, where they take your picture or give you things and then force you to pay for it. And I get it, right? Sweet kids who spent time shoveling a driveway, but OP did not ask for it. And for mom to march over and demand payment is frickin' ridiculous. Like, I'm in the same boat as OP. I would not pay them a dime, guys. They should have knocked and asked first. And the mom encouraging this behavior and painting OP as the bad guy to everyone in the neighborhood is so stupid. Also, the fact that they had mom's Venmo account on the phone, like this might be a reach, but mom, are you sitting at home on your butt and making your kids go earn extra cash for you? But yeah, that's entitled people for you guys. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our slash, entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode where bad bosses are getting absolutely destroyed by their workers. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.